Picture yourself awakening with no alarm, no electric light coming through the window, and no scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen. The only things present are cold stone pushing against your body, the soft echo of the wind outdoors, and a gloom so profound that you cannot even see your own hand. The outdoor temperature ranges from approximately -90 to 15 degrees Celsius. When the sun does make an appearance, it remains visible for just a couple of hours before vanishing back behind the horizon. You are dwelling 18,000 years ago in the center of the final major ice age. And remarkably, this is considered a successful night. The Europe you would have known during that time would be completely unfamiliar. In places now filled with dense woods and farmed land, there existed a frozen landscape, swept by continuous winds and covered by ice sheets 3 kilometers deep. The ocean level dropped so much that you could travel from France to England on foot. Woolly mammoths roamed across the vast plains. Hairy rhinoceroses competed over territories. In the midst of this harsh world, our forebears discovered a straightforward, clever, and unexpectedly effective answer. They entered into the stone itself. However, there is a question that hardly anyone ever asks. What was the genuine experience of residing inside a cave? Not the stereotypical image of a caveman brandishing a club and making grunting noises. Not the animated character, but the actual truth. How did it feel to wake each morning aware that the outside world was intent on ending your life? And yet, still manage to endure, bring up children, create artwork, and build a society within a cavity in the stone. Oh, inside the stone. The response will astonish you. Modern archaeological discoveries about life in Ice Age caves do not tell a story of brutality. This is a narrative of extraordinary intelligence in the face of conditions that few people could ever imagine enduring. First, let us correct a misconception that you have likely held since your school years. Most Ice Age humans did not live permanently inside caves. They were nomads who moved with the seasons. They used these caves as winter camps, temporary shelters on stormy nights, and forward outposts during hunts. It was less a home and more a combination of field hospital, supply depot, and strategic headquarters. The cave was a resource that they knew exactly how to use. The initial critical decision was the choice of location. Not any opening in the rock would suffice. Human groups sought caves with south-facing entrances where the sun could shine in during the few hours of winter daylight. They needed entrances that were not too wide, large enough to pass through, and small enough to block the wind, offering protection. They required a water source nearby, but it could not be so close that the risk of flooding was real. Additionally, they always needed visibility, overlooking the open plains to see predators and prey before they approached. When you enter one of these caves today at an archaeological site in southern France or northern Spain, researchers have discovered that it is not a chaotic and dirty space, but an organized one. There are clearly defined zones. An area near the entrance, with more light and access to the outside, was used for preparing food and working hides. A deeper, darker, and warmer area was reserved for sleeping and keeping children. Occasionally, a more secluded zone, entirely separated from everyday routines, served a purpose that was wholly unforeseen, and we are about to learn what that was. They realized that fire stood at the core of all existence, not in a figurative sense, but in reality. Evidence of hearths at these locations indicates that flames were kept burning nearly non-stop throughout the winter season. Fire served purposes beyond warmth which was crucial, including illumination, defense from predators, communication between communities, and a function it took researchers many years to acknowledge: its role in social interaction. Thus, gathered by the flames, individuals conversed, shared wisdom, and reached personal choices together. The fire functioned simultaneously as entertainment, a family reunion, and an educational setting. Maintaining the fire's glow was a task carrying great importance. Journeys of charcoal fragments reveal that these communities selected particular kinds of timber based on intended use. Hardwoods were employed to produce smoldering fires that endured throughout the entire night. Softer woods were utilized to achieve faster lighting. When timber was limited, they burned animal grease as an energy source. They did not simply toss any material into the flames. They possessed precise knowledge of their actions. Picture now the instant when the sun fully vanishes from sight. Outdoors, the temperature drops sharply. The wind roars with such intensity that you sense its vibration within the rock walls. Meanwhile, within the cavern, your kin, maybe 15, maybe 20, individuals arranges itself for the evening. Young ones are bundled in animal skins. Elderly individuals remain near the middle, where the fire's warmth is strongest. Younger males and females take positions on the periphery, between the collective and the cave mouth, a layout that is not haphazard, but carefully planned. Archaeologists recognized this spatial layout by studying the locations of various artifact types within the caves. Implements such as hunting tools, spear point scrapers, and flint knives were frequently found in outer areas. The remains of smaller animals and more delicate food items were located in the central area. Childcare-related tools, including bone needles for sewing tiny garments, are found in the safest spots. The cave was not a disorganized, primitive space. Rather, it was a dwelling with its own inherent order. Clothing merits particular focus here, as it marks one of humanity's foremost technological advancements. Yet very few people discuss this fact. At Ice Age sites, bone needles, some just a few centimeters long with fine holes, were made using stone implements. These findings reveal that ancient humans sewed their garments with remarkable accuracy. They did not simply drape animal skins over themselves. They trimmed, molded, and stitched together leather and fur to make fitted garments, including sleeves, hoods, and boots. According to researchers, enduring temperatures as low as -2 degrees Celsius would have been impossible without such clothing. The bone needle might be the most significant artifact in human history, and it originated within these very caves. Food represented an entirely different realm of intricacy. Common stereotypes claim that they hunted mammoths. The truth is far more captivating. It is true that they hunted large animals like reindeer, bison, and wild horses, but such events were infrequent and demanded teamwork, strategizing, and significant risk. Their everyday meals were much more diverse, comprising fruits, tubers, berries when in season, fish, particularly in river areas, eggs, insects, and mollusks. When the group stayed close to coasts or lakes, they gathered pine nuts and other seeds during autumn and saved them for the winter. And here is a fact that many individuals do not envision. They did not only roast meat directly over an open flame. Evidence from archaeology indicates that heated stones were utilized to bring liquids to a boil in containers made of leather or animal stomachs. This method enabled them to make broths, tenderize tough roots, and render fat from bones, which was a crucial source of calories in the winter. The steaming broth within a chilly cave represented more than mere survival. It offered comfort, held ritual significance, and served as their evening meal. However, we now reach the segment of the narrative that truly transforms everything. The deeper area of the cave was removed from everyday activities, distant from the illumination of the central hearth. What took place within that space? Art represents some of the earliest and most remarkable creative works ever produced by humankind. The cave artworks found at Lascaux, Altamira in Spain, and numerous other locations globally were made within these deep cavern sections. These paintings were produced in almost complete blackness, illuminated only by the wavering glow of lamps fashioned from animal fat placed on hollowed stones. Consider what this actually implies in practical terms. An individual or a small team would carry their rudimentary lamps. They would venture hundreds of meters into the rock, passing through tight passageways and entering rooms with no apparent way out. In that profound stillness, found only deep within a cave, they would depict bison in movement, horses in groups, and mammoths with exact anatomical features. They employed pigments derived from charcoal and ochre, applied using their fingers, feathers, or hollow bones that served as early spray devices. These creators grasped the concept of perspective, utilizing the rock's natural contours to impart a three-dimensional quality to their images. They deliberately selected the placement of each animal so that the shifting lamplight would generate a sense of motion. This artwork is not the result of chance. It is deliberate, refined, and systematically designed art, produced by individuals whom many still envision as nearly primal creatures, focused solely on survival. The existence of these artworks deep within the caves, and it raises questions why they were not made at the entrances, which would have been easier and safer. However, Gryologists continue to argue about the reason for such great depth. Certain hypotheses propose that these chambers served a ceremonial or religious role, with the darkness and seclusion being deliberately incorporated into the experience. Alternate ideas indicate that they were used for initiation ceremonies, where youth were brought for rites of passage. We are certain that descending to such depths demanded bravery, forethought, and a well-defined goal. Such an undertaking was never accidental. At this point, it is worthwhile to stop and dismiss any exaggerated romantic notions that might be developing. Because existence within those caverns was also brutal in ways that are hard to fathom. The death rate among infants was exceedingly high. Even slight injuries could lead to fatal infections. Due to a coarse diet, teeth became eroded, resulting in persistent pain that could not be alleviated. Particularly harsh winters could wipe out whole communities. Remains unearthed from Ice Age locations exhibit poorly healed breaks, severe joint disease in individuals of young age, and evidence of frequent periods of hunger. The exquisite cave art on the walls existed alongside a daily brutality that none of us would genuinely wish to endure. Nevertheless, they endured, and they produced art. The most remarkable aspect when piecing together all this evidence is not any single element by itself, but rather how they combine. It is the awareness that a person who inhabited a cave 18,000 years ago, amid an Ice Age winter with outdoor temperatures of -2 degrees, lacking written language, lacking metal, without the wheel, deprived of many innovations that we now deem essential, albeit primitive ones. That individual rose each day and made intricate, logical, and inventive choices to guarantee not just daily survival, but also the group's endurance across weeks, months, and generations. Consider the knowledge that had to be passed down. What type of wood burns more slowly? Which plants are safe to eat and which are toxic? In which parts of the river does the ice form more quickly? And where is the ice cover dangerous? At what time of year do bison migrate, and which valley do they travel through? What is the method for stitching a boot that prevents meltwater from seeping in? What indicators reveal that a storm is coming before it actually reaches you? This knowledge was never recorded in writing anywhere. Every bit of this knowledge resided in the minds of the elderly, passed down verbally by the fireside, and embedded in customs and ceremonies that prevented its loss. The community's elders were not just honored through custom. They served as the actual living repositories for all the technological knowledge that sustained the group. The death of a seasoned elder during an unfavorable winter could have disastrous consequences. Did children begin learning from a very young age? Archaeological evidence reveals tiny children's footprints in soft clay areas within certain caves, suggesting that they explored these environments, likely with adult supervision. Small animal carvings made from bone and ivory, discovered at European locations, indicate the presence of toys. Items crafted not solely for utilitarian use, but also to amuse and instruct children via play. The notion of childhood was already recognized. Nurturing the growth of young children had already been acknowledged as crucial. Additionally, a social aspect existed that is often overlooked in stories about this era. These communities were not entirely cut off from one another. Proof comes from objects discovered far from their natural sources, such as Mediterranean shells unearthed in caves located deep inside France. The transportation of premium flint stones over several hundred kilometers indicates that networks for trade and communication were present among far-off communities. Their gatherings likely occurred during particular seasons at designated sites, where they traded goods, exchanged knowledge, and almost definitely maintained genetic variety by forming unions across various groups. Some basic form of diplomacy was already in place. Alongside music, archaeological sites exceeding 40,000 years old have yielded flutes crafted from vulture, bones, and mammoth ivory. Several of these flutes remain playable even now. Scientists have performed on these instruments and verified that they generate identifiable musical scales. Within that shadowy cavern, as the fire crackled and the icy wind outside resembled a massive unseen beast, music and rhythm were present, and dancing was highly probable. This completely alters the initial impression you had at the start of this narrative, doesn't it? The early human was neither a lonely nor a bewildered savage. He represented a fully developed human. He existed in a complex societal framework, utilizing technology tailored to his surroundings. He possessed creative expression, compassion for his fellow beings, and extended plans to guarantee the group's survival. We now arrive at a consideration linking everything to modern times. It is tempting to examine that era and wonder how they managed to endure with such limited resources, yet the correct inquiry might be the reverse. How did we arrive at a state of relying on such an abundance of things? An individual from the Ice Age possessed within their own consciousness and physique all the expertise required to construct a dwelling, create fire, hunt, collect food, cook, stitch garments, rear offspring, and produce art. All of this was accomplished without reliance on outside infrastructure, electrical power, distribution networks, or experts required for every activity. We are not claiming that existence was superior. It obviously was not in several important respects. Whether it is health or a long life, experiencing no pain is simply the lack of suffering. However, those early humans possessed a total proficiency, an ability to take action and adapt in ways that are truly remarkable and bring to mind a crucial point. The human brain that adorned the cave walls is, in a remarkable way, identical to the brain that is scanning these words at this very moment. That ability existed right from the start. The things that evolved were the surroundings, the instruments, and the obstacles. The cavern was not a confinement. It served as a remedy. This was the clever reaction of a flexible species to a world that had chosen for millennia to be unfavorable for living beings. Inside that flawed, chilly, shadowy, and severe remedy, something thrived that no other creature had ever achieved. A society, a community, an identity passed across generations, a narrative shared. By the hearth, recounted year after year, until eventually an individual discovered a method to inscribe it onto rock using a reddish pigment. Thus, even if all perished in the upcoming winter, some legacy would persist. Those artworks remain present. 18,000 years later, they endured conflicts of kingdoms and the disappearance of whole animal groups. Upon viewing them for the initial occasion, even within an image, a part within you acknowledges the hand that crafted them, not as a far-off ancient forebear, but as an individual strikingly similar to yourself, striving, through the sole method they comprehended, to imprint upon the earth and declare, "I occupied this place, I lived, and I held significance." Potentially, this stands as the most ancient and lasting teaching that humankind has ever generated. This message was inscribed upon a cavern surface in darkness, illuminated by the wavering flame of a fat lamp, by a person who could never have imagined that, several thousand years later, you would still be listening. Should this narrative have changed your perspective on our identity and origins, kindly post your thoughts in the comments section below. I am curious to learn which section astonished you the most. Please give the video a thumbs up if you have watched until this point, as it greatly supports the channel in continuing to create similar material. If you haven't subscribed yet, the subscribe button is available for you. A single click ensures you will not miss any future episodes. In the upcoming video, we will explore how early humans managed to traverse oceans without a compass or a map, and without any form of technology that we would categorize as either safe or harmful. See you in the next video.